Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about different learning disabilities. There are many types of learning disabilities, and today we're going to talk about a few. But first, it might be helpful to get a definition of what a learning disability, or LD, is. LDs affect the way someone takes in verbal and nonverbal information, organizes information, and their ability to memorize information and retrieve it. For some, reading, writing, speaking, math, and understanding can be a challenge. Learning disabilities vary in their severity and are not always the same. So let's take a look at the LDs we're going to be hearing about today. Our friend Ashley will be talking to us about dyslexia, its causes, testing, and learning aids. Next, our friend Jessica will be discussing dysgraphia, its complications, learning accommodations, and types of dysgraphia. Finally, our friend Tyler will be talking to us about dyscalculia, what it means, and signs of dyscalculia. So let's sit back and hear what they have to say.
Dyslexia is actually just one common learning disorder that affects about 2 to 8% of school-age children and nearly about 15% of the overall population as a whole. With dyslexia, oftentimes we see children struggling with spelling, word sequence, letter sequence, and this can hinder the effects on their writing and reading, and sometimes in most cases even their speech. Is that having a learning disability like dyslexia, for example, is not a result of poor intelligence. It is not a result of laziness or poor schooling or poor home background, but rather it is a neurological and genetic disorder that affects the brain and allows the brain to interpret information differently at a slower rate than the average person. If a parent or educator notices that the child is struggling in areas of reading, for instance, where they notice that the child is still stuck at the grade 1 level when they should be at the grade 3 level of reading, then chances are they may have some form of learning disability and assess a learning disability. Standardized tests are given out to the child in which it tests a whole bunch of their skills and tests their levels of achievement on spelling, reading, writing, oral reading, comprehension. Some tests even look for the just overall academic knowledge in a general sense. If he or she is diagnosed below average and scores low on the tests, then the child is indefinitely diagnosed with some form of learning disability. Actually, about 90% of children with dyslexia are able to learn effectively in a mainstream classroom. So therefore, we don't see a need to put the child with dyslexia in a specialized program. Rather, we just need to create a set of accommodations and methods that will help the child. Using visual representations is very handy for dyslexic students, whether it be a chart, flow chart, an outline, a fill-in-the-blank chart. Just giving them that during a presentation can go a long way and allows the child to actually pick out some of the key points of the presentation, and therefore they are then able to write it down or type it out with assistive technology. Using books, tapes, and other assistive technology is very handy for dyslexic students. So since most of the time dyslexic students are visual learners, we try to incorporate any type of assistive technology or visual representation so that they can understand most of the material a lot better. There are programs out there that can help the child spell, for instance, and they can help them read. So reading, oral reading can go a long way. They can read along with the computer. They can do little things like that that can actually benefit them altogether. Their work. So giving them extra time doesn't leave them feeling overwhelmed that they need to get this done in a set amount of time when their peers are already finished, but rather just a sense of them having known that they have extra time can go a long way. Limiting the amount of information given to a dyslexic child is very important. The key here is not to overwhelm the child with a boatload of information at once. Oftentimes it is thought that when people are diagnosed with a learning disability, that it can hinder all aspects of their life and it can hold them back, which in reality that is not the case. Today we're looking at people like Tom Cruise or previously Steve Jobs and Albert Einstein, who all had a form of learning disability known as dyslexia and have gone on to do great things.
Dysgraphia is a learning disability that makes the act of writing difficult. It can lead to problems with spelling, poor handwriting, and putting thoughts on paper. People with dysgraphia can have trouble organizing letters, numbers, and words on a line or page. One effective accommodation is to teach the use of word processor. Students also should experiment with different types of writing tools. Other bypass methods include allowing the student to answer questions orally or in a type recorder instead of writing, modifying written assignments so that there's less writing required, and allowing extended time to complete tests and assignments. Major aspects of dysgraphia. There are different types of dysgraphia that include illegible, irregular, and inconsistent letter formation, as well as legible but very slow and/or small writing. In all cases, dysgraphia writing requires inordinate amounts of energy, stamina, and time. It is often difficult to express ideas through writing with dysgraphia. These students are often bright and good at reading. Their failure to produce acceptable work is blamed on laziness or carelessness. Other relevant information about dysgraphia. A few people with dysgraphia lack only the fine motor coordinations to produce legible handwriting, but some may have a physical tremor that interferes with writing. In most cases, however, several brain systems interact to produce dysgraphia. A qualified clinician must directly test the individual. Such tests include writing self-generated sentences and paragraphs, and copying age-appropriate text. The examiner assesses not only the finished product, but also the process, including the posture, position, pencil grip, fatigue, cramping, and tremors of the writing hand. Major characteristics of dysgraphia. Individuals with dysgraphia have trouble with tight, awkward pencil grips and body position. They avoid writing and drawing tasks. They have trouble forming letter shapes and inconsistent spacing between letters and words. Poor understanding of uppercase and lowercase letters, and an inability to write or draw in a line. This results in individuals tiring easily. Accommodations to the curriculum. Young children in kindergarten and grade 1 should learn to form letters correctly. Muscle training and overlearning are good techniques, and both critical for the ramification of dysgraphia. For all students, writing with eyes closed or averted is a powerful reinforcer. Teachers need to provide some kind of notes, either photocopies of other students' notes or notes they have written with blanks for the student to fill in. Writing on a slightly inclined plane may also be helpful for the student.
So, what is dyscalculia? Dyscalculia is a math-related learning disability that makes it difficult for a student to process numbers and patterns. This makes it so students with dyscalculia have trouble with many different sections within mathematics. There are two major areas of weakness that students exhibit if they are diagnosed with dyscalculia. The first is visual spatial difficulties. This is when a student has trouble processing what the eyes see. The second is language processing difficulties within the field of mathematics. This is when a student has trouble processing what their ears hear. With these two areas of weakness that people with dyscalculia exhibit, there are 7 related categories within the mathematical field that they have trouble comprehending and understanding. The 7 are magnitude, ranking, comparison, measurement, rounding, percent, and estimation. Students that have dyscalculia would exhibit issues within some or all of these fields. usually having trouble identifying the difference between certain numbers or patterns. So for example, a student that has dyscalculia would have a hard time understanding that 6 holds a higher value than the number 4 does. They would just take it for granted that each number represents something different, but would not actually understand what they actually represent. Next, I'll go over some common warning signs that are associated with dyscalculia. The first area we'll look at is identifying dyscalculia or common warning signs of dyscalculia with students that are younger than grade 1. So preschool and kindergarten is where you would begin to notice it first. These students would exhibit problems with difficulties with learning to count, trouble recognizing printed numbers, difficulty trying to gather the idea of how a number would actually relate to the value of something. So how would the number 4 relate to 4 cars? They also have poor memory for numbers and trouble organizing different patterns and thoughts within mathematics. Next, I'll look at school-age children. School-age children have trouble with mathematical facts, so the methods that you learn in school with math. So this would include adding, subtracting, division, multiplication. They would also have difficulty developing problem-solving skills. So if you have like word problems within mathematics, these students would have a hard time comprehending and understanding these more difficult mathematical problems. They also students that have dyscalculia exhibit problems sometimes with reading, so it would be hard for them to understand more complex problem-solving questions if these are on paper instead of being asked to them by ear. When testing for dyscalculia, students are asked to complete a variety of standardized tests to first evaluate their strengths and weaknesses, and secondly, address the section that the student has issues with so they can get help within those areas that they struggle in. These tests will compare students' knowledge of general math skills to other students that are expected to be at the same level. If a student does not test at around age level that their peers are at, they may have a form of dyscalculia and they may need additional help. When students are being tested for dyscalculia, there are several areas which the standardized testing that they go through covers. The first is the ability with basic math skills like counting, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Second is the ability to predict appropriate procedures based on understanding patterns. So this is like knowing when to add, subtract, or multiply. They also will have issues with their ability to organize objects in a logical way, so their patterning ability. Additionally, their ability to measure or tell time, so any form of measurement at all, even if you were using something as simple as 8 car lengths away, they wouldn't understand what that would mean. Ability to estimate number quantities, and the ability to self-check work and find alternate ways to solve problems.
Wow, that was a lot of awesome information. Thanks, you three. Students with learning disabilities have the ability to do well and succeed with the right help. Thanks for watching this video by Kristen, Ashley, Tyler, and Jessica. We hope you learned lots.